The great meeting hall stretched out like a metal ocean. Thousands of seats filled the curved walls, rising up and up until they disappeared into shadows. Each seat held a different kind of alien being. Some had scales that caught the light. Others floated in clear tanks filled with strange gas. A few looked almost like humans, but with too many eyes or arms that bent the wrong way. Elena Vasquez sat in the human section, which felt very small compared to all the others. She wore a simple black suit and kept her face calm, even though her heart was beating fast. Around her, the other human diplomats shifted in their chairs. They all knew this meeting would not go well. At the center of the hall, a huge crystal being rose from a platform that glowed with soft blue light. This was Speaker Valtheris, older than most stars and harder than diamond. When it spoke, its voice came from everywhere at once, translated into every language in the hall. "We gather today because of a problem," the speaker said. "One species refuses to follow the rules that keep peace in our galaxy. One species says no when others say yes. One species breaks the laws that protect all of us." Elena knew they were talking about humans. They were always talking about humans lately. A tall, thin alien with silver skin stood up. This was Ambassador Zeth Kalar from the Hegemony, one of the most powerful groups in the Council. His people had been space travelers for millions of years. They thought they knew everything about how civilizations should work. Speaker Valtheras speaks the truth, Zeth Kalar said. His voice was smooth like oil, but cold like space. The humans have broken our laws 3 times in the last year. They built colonies in spaces that belong to other species. They refused to let our ships check their military vessels. And worst of all, they walk away from peace talks instead of finding solutions. Murmurs filled the hall. Elena heard the word primitive in several alien languages. She heard dangerous and uncontrolled. The speaker's crystal body rang like a bell for silence. "Show us the proof." A massive screen appeared in the air above them. It showed human ships moving through space. Then it showed new human cities on planets that the Council said humans should not have. The screen showed human warships turning away Council inspection teams. Finally, it showed human diplomats leaving meeting rooms while talks were still happening. "These are not the actions of a civilized species," Zeth Kalar continued. "We have tried to be patient. We have offered the humans many chances to learn our ways, but they refuse every offer. They say our rules do not apply to them. They act like they are better than the rest of us." Elena almost laughed. Better than the rest of them? The Council species had technology humans could barely understand. They had cities that floated in space and could move between stars in days instead of months. They had weapons that could crack planets and shields that could stop suns. Humans were babies compared to most of the species in this hall, but that was exactly the problem, Elena thought. The Council treated humans like children who needed to be taught how to behave. They made rules for humans without asking what humans wanted. They told humans where they could live and how they could defend themselves. They expected humans to be grateful for the chance to follow orders. Another alien stood up. This one looked like a giant insect with rainbow wings. "Perhaps the humans do not understand," it said in a voice like buzzing bees. "Perhaps they need more time to learn civilized behavior." "They have had 50 years, Zeth Kalar replied. 50 years since first contact. Other species learned to follow Council law in half that time. The humans are either too stupid to learn or too proud to obey." Elena felt her jaw tighten. Around her, she could feel the other human diplomats getting angry too, but they all stayed quiet. This was her job, not theirs. The speaker raised one crystal arm. "The Council has decided. We offer the humans one final choice. submit to full integration protocols, or face complete isolation from galactic society. The hall went silent. Full integration protocols meant humans would have to follow every council law. Human colonies would be watched by council observers. Human ships would need council permits to travel. Human governments would have to get council approval for major decisions. It meant giving up human independence completely. Complete isolation. Meant no trade with any council species. No access to council space routes. No communication with the galactic network. It meant humans would be cut off from the rest of the galaxy like they had been before first contact. Elena looked around the HCI hall at thousands of alien faces. Some looked smug, like they were sure humans would cave in. Others looked worried, like they thought isolation might be too harsh. A few looked curious, like they wondered what humans would actually do. Ambassador Vasquez, the speaker said, "You speak for humanity. What is your answer?" Elena stood up slowly. The hall was so quiet she could hear her own breathing. She thought about everything that had led to this moment. 50 years of humans trying to fit into a galactic civilization. That saw them as newcomers who should know their place. 50 years of compromises that always seemed to favor the older, more powerful species. 50 years of being told that human ways were wrong and council ways were right. She thought about the human colonies that were thriving on worlds that council had written off as worthless. She thought about human scientists making discoveries that council experts said were impossible. She thought about human engineers building ships with new designs that worked better than anything the council had seen before. Maybe being cut off from the galaxy would not be the punishment the council thought it was. Elena looked directly at the crystal speaker. Humanity's answer is no. The word echoed through the hall like a gunshot. Aliens gasped and chattered in dozens of languages. Some stood up in their seats. Others made sounds of shock or anger. No, the speaker's voice carried disbelief. You refuse both options? We refuse to be given only two bad choices, Elena said clearly. We refuse to give up our freedom or accept exile as punishment for being ourselves. We refuse to let this council decide how humans should live. She started walking toward the exit. Her fellow diplomats followed behind her. If you leave this hall, Zethkalar called after her, there will be no more chances to negotiate. The council will act without human input. Elena stopped at the doorway and turned back. She looked at the thousands of aliens staring at her with confusion and anger. These beings had ruled the galaxy for millions of years. They had never met a species that simply refused to play their game. Then act, she said. Humanity will do the same. She walked out of the hall. The door closed behind the human delegation. With a soft hiss, inside, the aliens sat in stunned silence. In all the long history of the Galactic Council, no species had ever just said no and walked away. They had no idea what to do next, but they would figure something out. They always did. The Council had ways of dealing with difficult species. They would soon learn that humans had ways of dealing with difficult situations too. 3 days after the humans walked out, the Council voted. 847 species raised their hands, claws, tentacles, or whatever they used to say yes. The decision was clear. Humanity would face complete isolation from Galactic. Civilization. Ambassador Zethkalar smiled as he watched the vote counters announce the results. His silver skin gleamed under the hall's lights. The humans will learn, he told his aide, a smaller version of himself with nervous energy. When their economy crashes and their people start starving, they will come crawling back to beg for mercy. The Council moved quickly to put their plan into action. Within hours, every human trade ship in Council space received the same message. Leave immediately and do not return. Human merchants who had been doing business with alien worlds for decades suddenly found their contracts canceled and their goods. Refused. The hyperspace routes that connected different parts of the galaxy were controlled by ancient alien technology. The Council simply removed human ships from the access lists. Any vessel trying to use the fast travel lanes would be turned away or destroyed if they refused to leave. Communication networks that spanned thousands of light years began blocking all signals from human space. Messages that had once flowed freely between human colonies and alien worlds simply stopped working. It was like someone had cut all the telephone lines at once. Captain Sarah Chun was commanding a human freighter called the New Horizon when the isolation began. She had been trading with the Zephyrian colonies for 5 years, carrying rare minerals that humans mined better than anyone else. The Zephyrians were peaceful plant-like beings who had always been fair in their deals. When Sarah arrived at the Zephyrian trade station, the docking controller's voice sounded sad through her ship's speakers. "I am sorry, Captain Chun, but we cannot allow you to dock. The Council has forbidden all contact with human vessels." "What about our contract?" Sarah asked. Her cargo hold was full of titanium crystals that the Zephyrians needed for their technology. "We've been trading partners for years. The contract is void. Please leave our space immediately, or we will be forced to call for Council enforcement." Ships. Sarah stared at her communication screen in disbelief. She had friends among the Zephyrians. They had shared meals and stories. Now they were treating her like an enemy just because some council politicians had voted. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. Human diplomats were escorted out of alien embassies. Human students at galactic universities were told to pack their things and go home. Human tourists found themselves stranded as alien transportation companies refused to carry them. The isolation was complete and immediate. Almost overnight, humanity went from being part of galactic civilization to being completely cut off from it. Back on Earth, President Martinez called an emergency meeting of the Global Council. Leaders from every human world gathered in the Great Assembly Hall in Geneva. The room buzzed with worried voices speaking dozens of human languages. "The reports are coming in from all our outer colonies," said Admiral Torres, head of the Human Space Force. "Every trade route is blocked. Every communication channel is dead. We're completely cut off. How long can we survive like this?" asked Director Kim from the Mars Industrial Complex. "Half our technology depends on materials we trade for with alien species." President Martinez stood at the podium, looking tired but determined. "We survived for thousands of years before we met any aliens. We'll survive now. But our colonies need supplies," protested Governor Walsh from the Centauri system. "Without alien medical technology, people will die." "Then we'll have to make our own medical technology," Martinez replied. "We'll have to make everything ourselves, just like our ancestors did." Dr. Elizabeth Stone, Earth's top scientist, raised her hand. "Actually, Mr. President, this might not be as bad as everyone thinks. We've been so busy trying to fit into galactic civilization that we stopped developing our own technologies. Maybe isolation will force us to be creative again." Some people in the room looked at her like she was crazy. Others nodded thoughtfully. Meanwhile, in council space, the aliens waited for humanity to collapse. Zith Kalar had his people prepare reports on human economic activity. He expected to see trade dropping, industrial production falling, and desperate messages begging for the isolation to end. The first reports confused him. Human trade had indeed stopped with alien worlds, but trade between human colonies was increasing. Ships were moving constantly between Earth, Mars, the Centauri colonies, and dozens of other human settlements. "They're probably just moving their stored supplies around," Seth Kalar told his aide. "When those run out, he'll have nothing left." Months passed. The expected collapse did not happen. Long-range sensors showed human colonies were not only surviving, but growing. New construction was happening on every human world. Industrial output was actually increasing. A year went by, and 2 years. Zeth Kalar's confidence began to crack. How could an isolated species be thriving? It went against everything the Council knew about galactic economics and technology. "Send a scout ship," he ordered. "I want to know what's really happening in human space." The scout ship was a small, fast vessel designed to slip into enemy territory without being detected. It crossed into human space near the edge of the Centauri system and immediately began taking readings. What it found made no sense. The Centauri colonies had grown by 30% since the isolation began. New orbital stations were under construction. Mining operations had expanded to asteroids that had been ignored before. Most shocking of all, the humans seemed to be developing new technologies. The scout ship's captain, a cautious alien named Vector, watched human vessels moving through space with designs he had never seen before. These ships were sleeker and faster than the old human designs. They moved in ways that suggested new propulsion systems. "How is this possible?" Victor whispered to his crew. "They have no access to Council technology databases. They can't trade for advanced materials. Where are they getting these innovations?" His science officer, a being with multiple eyes that could see across different spectrums, studied the readings carefully. "Captain, I think they're developing everything themselves. These aren't copies of Council technology. These are completely new designs." Victor felt a chill run through his scaled body. The Council had always assumed that progress required the shared knowledge of many species. No single species could advance quickly on its own. It was supposed to be impossible, but humans seemed to be proving that assumption wrong. The scout ship continued its surveillance for several more weeks. Every day brought new surprises. Human scientists were making breakthroughs in energy production, materials science, and space travel. Human engineers were building things that Council experts would have said could not work. When Vector returned to Council space with his report, Zeth Kalar read it 3 times before he could believe it. "They're not collapsing," he said finally. "They're advancing." His aide shuffled nervously. "Should we extend the isolation? Make it even stricter?" Zeth Kalar stared out his office window at the great space station where the Council met. For millions of years, this had been the center of galactic civilization. Every important decision was made here. Every species that mattered had representatives here, except for humans, who seemed to be doing just fine without them. "Continue the isolation," he said quietly. "Maybe they'll still collapse. Maybe this is just temporary." But deep in his heart, Zeth Kalar was beginning to suspect the Council had made a terrible mistake. They had tried to punish humanity by cutting them off from galactic civilization. Instead, they might have set humanity free. 5 years after the Great Isolation began, something happened that no one expected. The humans disappeared. It started with the outer colonies. Long-range sensors that the Council used to watch human space began showing strange readings. The mining stations around Proxima Centauri went quiet. The agricultural colonies on Kepler 442b stopped broadcasting their daily status reports. One by one, human settlements simply went dark. At first, the Council observers thought it might be equipment failure. Space was dangerous, and colonies sometimes lost power or communication systems. But when patrol ships were sent to investigate, they found something that made no sense. The colonies were empty. Captain Tisara of the Council patrol ship Vigilant Harmony was the first to land on an abandoned human world. She was a veteran officer from the Altarian Republic, a species known for their careful attention to detail and logical thinking. She had seen many strange things in her 40 years of service, but nothing like this. The human colony on New Geneva should have held 50,000 people. The orbital platforms around the planet could have supported another 20,000. When Tessara's ship arrived, her sensors showed 0 life signs. "Take us down to the main settlement," she ordered. Her crew, "I want to see this with my own eyes." The shuttle landed in what had been the central plaza of New Geneva City. Tessara stepped out wearing full environmental gear, though her sensors said the air was still breathable. Her team followed behind her, weapons ready for anything. The city was perfect. Buildings stood exactly as they should. Streets were clean and well maintained. Vehicles sat parked in neat rows. Gardens still bloomed with earth flowers that the colonists had brought with them. Everything looked normal, except for one crucial detail. There were no people anywhere. "Sir," called her security chief, a massive insectoid being named Clicked H, "you need to see this." He led her to what had been the colony's spaceport. The landing pads were empty, but they showed clear signs of recent use. Burn marks from ship. Engines were still fresh. Cargo containers sat neatly stacked, as if someone had been in the middle of loading them when they stopped. Tessara examined the containers. They held personal belongings, clothes, photos, small treasures that people keep to remember home. It looked like the colonists had been preparing to leave, but in an organized way, not like they were running from danger. "Captain," her science officer reported, "I'm reading power signatures in the residential areas. The buildings still have electricity. Food preservation systems are still running, but the houses are empty." They searched for hours. Every building, every room, every storage area. They found beds that looked like they had been slept in recently. They found meals half finished on tables. They found children's toys scattered on floors. But they found no people, living or dead. Even stranger, they found no signs of struggle. No weapons fired, no doors broken down, no evidence of fighting or panic. It was as if 50,000 humans had simply decided to leave all at once, taking only their most precious possessions. Similar reports came in from every human world the Council checked. The great shipyards of Titan were empty but intact. The research stations in the Vega system had been abandoned but carefully shut down. The massive orbital cities around Jupiter showed signs of organized evacuation rather than disaster. Back at Council headquarters, emergency meetings were called every day. The great meeting hall buzzed with confused and worried voices. Representatives from hundreds of species tried to make sense of what they were seeing. "An entire spacefaring civilization does not just disappear," declared Speaker Vel Thuros. The ancient crystal being's voice rang with frustration. "Populations in the billions cannot simply vanish without a trace." Ambassador Zeth Kalar paced back and forth on his platform. His silver skin had lost its usual shine. Something must have happened to them. Disease, perhaps, or natural disaster. Or maybe some enemy we don't know about attacked them. But that theory had problems too. Disease would leave bodies. Natural disasters would leave destruction. Enemy attacks would leave evidence of fighting. The human world showed none of these things. Catheta of the Symbiosis, a wise old being whose species had lived through any galactic crisis, raised a tentacle for attention. "Perhaps we should consider another possibility," she said in her thoughtful way. "Perhaps the humans left voluntarily." Gahal erupted in arguing voices. Zeth Kalar's voice cut through the noise. "Impossible. Where would they go? How would they move entire populations without anyone seeing them? The energy requirements alone would be beyond their technology." Kaveda remained calm. "We have assumed many things about human capabilities that turned out to be wrong. 5 years ago, we thought isolation would destroy them. Instead, they prospered. Maybe we are wrong about their transportation abilities, too." Dr. Nexus, the chief, science advisor to the Council, accessed his databanks. His robotic form hummed with processing power as he analyzed every report from human space. The evidence suggests coordinated evacuation over a period of approximately 6 months. The most recent colonies went dark only 3 weeks ago. This was not a sudden event. But coordinated by whom? Asked Speaker Val Thoreaus. And how did we? Not detect massive ship movements? Moving billions of people would require thousands of large vessels. Maybe they built new ships we couldn't detect, suggested Ambassador Yithran of the Confederation. They were developing new technologies. During the isolation. Or maybe, Hafeta said quietly, they found a way to travel that we don't understand. The Council spent weeks investigating. They sent their best ships to search human space thoroughly. They found exactly what the first patrols had reported: empty but undamaged colonies, clear signs of organized evacuation, and no clues about where the humans had gone. The mystery deepened when investigators found something odd in the abandoned human cities. In public squares and government buildings, they discovered small devices that had been left behind deliberately. The devices were simple message recorders, designed to activate when aliens came close. The first message was found in the ruins of the United Nations building on Earth. When Ambassador Zethkalar's team triggered it, a holographic image appeared. It showed Elena Vasquez, the human diplomat who had walked out of the council chambers 5 years earlier. She looked older now, with gray streaks in her hair, but her eyes were calm and confident. "If you are watching this," her image said, "then you have discovered that humanity has left this galaxy." This was not a decision made in fear or anger. It was a choice made with hope and determination. The hologram continued. "For 5 years, you tried to punish us by cutting us off from your civilization. You thought isolation would make us weak and desperate. You were wrong. Isolation gave us something much more valuable than your trade routes or technology databases. It gave us the freedom to discover what we could become." Zethkalar stared at the recording in disbelief. Around him, his investigation team murmured, in their various languages. "You will wonder how we achieved this," Elena's image went on. "How we moved billions of people without your knowledge. How we developed transportation beyond your understanding. The answer is simple. While you spent millennia perfecting the technologies you already had, we spent 5 years imagining technologies you thought were impossible." The hologram smiled, and for a moment, Elena looked like the same determined diplomat who had faced down the entire council. "We found a way to travel between galaxies. We found new homes among the stars you never thought to explore. We found civilizations that welcomed us as partners rather than demanding we serve as subjects." The message ended with words that would haunt the council for years to come. "You wanted us gone. We obliged. But remember this, you did not drive us away. You set us free." The hologram faded, leaving Zethkalar and his team standing in an empty building on an empty world, staring at the space where humanity's final message had been. Across the galaxy, similar messages were found on every abandoned human world. Each one contained the same basic information, but with personal touches that made it clear this had been planned for years. The council faced a truth that challenged everything they thought they knew about galactic civilization. Humanity had not just survived isolation, they had used it to transcend the limitations that bound every other species. And now they were gone, leaving behind only empty worlds and the unsettling knowledge that the galaxy had just become a much smaller place. The Joint Council expedition to investigate the human disappearance was the largest scientific mission in galactic history. 300 ships from 50 different species came together at the edge of what had once been human space. They brought the galaxy's best scientists, engineers, and archaeologists. If there were answers to be found, this expedition would find them. Admiral Korthan of the Drakmari Imperial Fleet commanded the expedition. His people were known as the greatest explorers in the galaxy, having mapped more star systems than any other species. If anyone could solve the mystery of humanity's disappearance, it would be him. Begin systematic exploration of all former human territories, he ordered from the bridge of his flagship, the Star Seeker. I want every planet, every space station, every asteroid mining platform searched completely. Look for anything we might have missed. The expedition split into smaller task forces. Each group took responsibility for a different part of human space. They searched for weeks, finding the same things earlier patrols had discovered: empty colonies, abandoned cities, and no trace of where billions of humans could have gone. Dr. Yalith of the Academic Alliance led the science team investigating Earth itself. Her species, the Mentari, were naturally curious beings who loved solving puzzles. She had studied the development of hundreds of civilizations and thought she understood how societies worked. But humanity continued to surprise her. The evacuation was incredibly organized, she reported to Admiral Corthan. They took personal belongings, but left all infrastructure intact. They shut down power systems properly and sealed buildings against weather damage. This was not the work of people running away in panic. How long do you estimate the evacuation took? The Admiral asked. Based on the evidence, at least 6 months for the outer colonies, possibly a full year for Earth itself. Moving this many people would have required careful planning and enormous resources. What puzzled Dr. Yalith most was what the humans had chosen to take with them. Food supplies were left behind, but recipe books were gone. Expensive artwork remained, but family photos had been carefully removed. Valuable metals stayed in storage, but libraries had been completely emptied. They took knowledge and memories, she told her research team. They left behind everything that could be replaced. Meanwhile, the archaeological team led by Professor Zinkara was making disturbing discoveries in the deep archives beneath major human cities. The Zinkara were living computers, beings who could process information faster than any organic mind. They specialized in finding patterns that others missed. In the basement of the Human Research Institute on Mars, Professor Zinkara found files that had been deliberately left behind. Unlike the personal belongings that were taken, these research documents seemed to be intended for the Council to discover. The files contained humanity's scientific progress during the 5 years of isolation. What Professor Zinkara read made his electronic mind spark with disbelief. Humans had been studying something called dimensional mathematics, theories about space and time that most council scientists considered pure fantasy. They had built experimental devices to test ideas about folding spacetime itself. Most shocking of all, they had apparently succeeded. Admiral, Professor Zinkara transmitted to the Star Seeker, you need to see these research files. The humans were working on transportation technology that shouldn't be possible. Admiral Cordan reviewed the files with growing amazement. The math was beyond anything in Council databases. The engineering diagrams showed machines that violated known laws of physics. Yet the test results suggested these impossible devices actually worked. How could they develop this so quickly? He wondered aloud. Even our most advanced species would need centuries to make such breakthroughs. His science advisor, a being whose species had spent millions of years studying the universe, offered a disturbing possibility. Perhaps they were not developing it during the isolation, Admiral. Perhaps they were developing it before the isolation, in secret. That thought led the expedition to focus on humanity's earliest space exploration sites. If humans had been hiding advanced research, it would likely be in their most remote and secure facilities. The breakthrough came when Dr. Yalith's team investigated a research station in the Kuiper Belt beyond Pluto. The station had been abandoned like all human facilities. But it contained something the earlier patrols had missed, a message crystal hidden in what appeared to be a maintenance closet. Unlike the public messages found in major cities, This crystal was clearly meant for serious scientific study. When activated, it projected not just Elena Vasquez, but what appeared to be a virtual tour of humanity's greatest achievement. The recording began in what looked like a massive underground facility carved into an asteroid. Elena stood in front of a machine that hurt to look at directly. Its shape seemed to twist and bend in ways that made no sense to eyes evolved in normal space. "If you are watching this," Elena said, "then you have finally found one of our research sites. This is the Prometheus Project, humanity's attempt to find a way past the barriers that limit galactic civilization." The virtual tour continued, showing vast chambers filled with impossible machinery. Human scientists worked alongside devices that seemed to exist partially in normal space and partially somewhere else. A technology was clearly far beyond anything the Council had ever imagined, while your species spent millions of years perfecting what you already knew, Elena explained. "We spent decades asking what might be possible if we threw out all the old rules." The recording showed test flights of vessels that moved through space by folding it around themselves. It showed experiments with gates that opened onto distant parts of the universe. Most incredibly, it showed successful contact with civilizations from other galaxies entirely. "We are not the first species to discover intergalactic travel," Elena continued. "There are others out there, civilizations that transcended their home galaxies long ago. They have been waiting for new species to join them, but they only contact those who prove they can think beyond conventional limitations." Dr. Yaleth paused the recording, her mind reeling. "Admiral, if this is true, then humanity didn't just disappear. They graduated." The recording continued with Elena showing brief glimpses of the civilizations humanity had encountered. Beings of pure energy who had learned to exist without physical form. Machine intelligences that spanned multiple dimensions. Organic species that had merged with their technology to become something entirely new. These civilizations have been watching the Milky Way for millions of years, Elena explained. They see species rise and fall. They see empires that last for eons and others that burn out in mere millennia. They have learned that only certain types of civilizations are ready for the next stage of existence. The image changed to show what appeared to be a vast meeting hall, but not like anything in council space. This hall existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, with beings that defied every assumption about what life could be. "The requirement is simple," Elena said. "A species must prove it can grow beyond the need for external authority. It must show it can thrive without being told what to do by others. It must demonstrate that its curiosity and drive for freedom are stronger than its desire for comfort and security." Admiral Korth felt his scales grow cold as he realized what Elena was saying. The Galactic Council represents everything these advanced civilizations have moved beyond, Elena continued. Rule by committee, progress limited by the slowest number, innovation stifled by fear of change. They saw humanity struggling against these same limitations and decided to watch what we would do. The recording showed brief images of human colonies in other galaxies, cities that floated in space without visible support, beings that looked human but seemed to glow with inner light, children playing games with toys that defied physics. "When you isolated us, you gave us the greatest gift possible," Elena said with a smile that seemed sad and grateful at the same time. "You freed us from the obligation to try fitting into a system that was never going to accept us anyway. You forced us to find our own path." The final image showed thousands of massive vessels, unlike any design in Council records. They moved through space by methods that seemed to involve reality itself, bending to accommodate them. Each ship was the size of a small moon and appeared to carry entire cities worth of people. "Humanity is leaving this galaxy not as refugees, but as graduates," Elena concluded. We have been invited to join a community of species that spans multiple galaxies and dimensions. We go not with anger toward those we leave behind, but with hope for what we might become. The recording ended with coordinates, not to any location in the Milky Way, but to observation points where Council ships might be able to detect evidence of intergalactic travel. Dr. Yalith and Admiral Corthan spent days checking those coordinates. What they found changed their understanding of the universe forever. The space around those points showed traces of dimensional distortion, unlike anything in Council science. Energy readings suggested gates that opened onto distances so vast they couldn't be measured. Most disturbing of all, they found evidence that these gates had been used. The news of humanity's true departure hit the Galactic Council like a shockwave that never stopped spreading. Within days of Admiral Corthan's report reaching Council headquarters, the carefully maintained order that had ruled the galaxy for millions of years began to crack. It started with the younger species, those who had joined the Council within the last few thousand years. Representatives from the Orlan Federation were the first to speak up during an emergency session. If the humans could find a way beyond our galaxy, declared Ambassador Thrixala, then why are we still here? Why are we following rules made by species who clearly don't know as much as they claimed? Speaker Valthuros, the ancient crystal being who had led the Council for longer than most civilizations had existed, tried to maintain order. The humans were reckless. They took enormous risks that could have destroyed them. We follow careful, proven methods that ensure stability and peace. Stability? Thrixala's voice rose with anger. You call cutting off an entire species stable? You call forcing them into exile peaceful? Maybe the humans were right to reject our methods. Murmurs of agreement rippled through sections of the Great Hall where younger species sat. This was unprecedented. In the long history of the Council, member species might debate policy details, but they never questioned the fundamental system itself. Ambassador Zifkalar stood to address the growing unrest. His silver skin seemed duller than usual, and his voice lacked its former confidence. The humans are gone. Whether we agree with their methods or not, we must focus on maintaining civilization for those who remain. Maintaining what? Called out Ambassador Kestar of the Meridian Alliance. A system that drives away the most innovative species we've encountered? A civilization so rigid that it forces promising young cultures to choose between conformity and exile? The arguments continued for hours. Representatives who had never questioned Council authority were suddenly asking difficult questions. Why? Did the Council always choose the safest option? Why were new ideas treated with suspicion? Why did rules never change, even when they clearly weren't working? But the real crisis began 3 months later, when something started happening on the worlds. Humanity had left behind. It started on Earth. Dr. Yalith had left monitoring equipment in the abandoned human cities to study how empty settlements changed. Over time, the equipment was designed to detect everything from weather patterns to small animal movements. Instead, it detected technology activating. Admiral, Dr. Yalith transmitted to the Council patrol ship orbiting Earth. The devices humans left behind are turning themselves on. Admiral Corthan, who had been promoted to head of Council security after his successful investigation, immediately dispatched ships to investigate. What they found defied explanation. In the basement of the Human Research Institute on Mars, machines that had been cold and silent for months suddenly hummed with power. Display screens that had been dark flickered to life. Most disturbing of all, the experimental dimensional equipment that humanity had abandoned began operating on its own. The machines seemed to be running a program, reported the investigation team. But we cannot determine what the program is designed to do. Similar reports came in from every former human world. Abandoned research facilities were coming alive. Equipment that Council scientists couldn't understand was activating according to some predetermined schedule. The empty human cities began to glow with strange energy patterns that hurt to look at directly. Dr. Yalith worked frantically to understand what was happening. Her analysis of the awakening technology revealed something that made her question everything she thought she knew about the universe. "The equipment isn't just turning on," she reported to Admiral Corthan. "It's evolving. The machines are improving, themselves using principles we cannot comprehend." "Evolving how?" the Admiral asked. "They appear to be developing new capabilities based on contact with the dimensional network humanity discovered. It's as if the machines are learning from civilizations in other galaxies." Within weeks, the situation became even stranger. The self-improving human technology began producing new devices, machines that materialized out of thin air, using methods that violated every known law of physics. These new machines were clearly not built for human use. They were designed for species the Council had never seen. Then came the signals. Council communication networks, which had been carefully isolated from human space for years, suddenly began receiving transmissions from beyond the galactic rim. The messages were not from humanity, but they were clearly connected to human technology. The first message was in a language no Council species recognized, but the translation was surprisingly easy to understand. It seemed designed to be decoded by any spacefaring civilization. "Greetings to the Galactic Council of the Milky Way," the message began. "We are the Nexus Collective, representatives of the Andromeda Galaxy. We have been contacted by the human species who have joined our community of intergalactic civilizations." Admiral Corthan read the translation 3 times before its meaning sank in. Humanity had not just found a way to other galaxies. They had become ambassadors to them. The message continued. "The humans have shared their experiences with your Council. We find your methods of governance ... interesting. We would like to meet representatives of your civilization to discuss the possibility of contact between our galaxies. However," the message went on, "we have learned that your Council forced the humans into exile for refusing to submit to your authority. This troubles us. The advanced civilizations of the intergalactic community value independence and innovation above conformity. We are unsure if your species are ready for contact with us." The final part of the message was an offer that split the Council in half. "We will establish a communication link through the dimensional network the humans created. Any species that wishes to learn about life beyond their home galaxy may request information. Any species that proves it can think beyond the limitations of local authority may be considered for intergalactic contact. But know this," the message concluded, "we will not deal with civilizations that suppress the growth of their members. If you wish to join the larger community of galaxies, you must first prove you can govern without forcing your values on others." The Council chambers erupted in chaos. Half the representatives demanded immediate contact with these intergalactic civilizations. The other half insisted it was too dangerous and probably a trap. Ambassador Seth Kalar found himself leading the faction that wanted to reject all contact. "We don't know anything about these beings," he argued. "They could be trying to destroy our civilization from within. The humans might have been deceived or controlled." But his opposition was growing stronger every day. Led by K Theta of the Symbiosis and supported by dozens of younger species, a new faction demanded that the Council fundamentally change how it operated. "The humans proved that there are alternatives to our way of life," K Theta argued. "These intergalactic civilizations are offering us a chance to grow beyond our current limitations. How can we refuse without even trying to understand what they offer?" The debate raged for months. Meanwhile, the dimensional network that humanity had left behind continued to evolve. New technologies appeared regularly in the abandoned human cities. Some of these devices seemed designed to help Council species understand advanced science. Others appeared to be tools for exploration and discovery. Most significantly, the network began allowing limited communication with human colonies in other galaxies. Council scientists who accessed the network received brief messages from their former colleagues. Dr. Sarah Chun, the freighter captain who had been turned away from Zephyrian space years earlier, sent a message to her old trading partners. The universe is so much larger than any of us imagined. There are thousands of galaxies out here, each with millions of civilizations. Most of them learned long ago that growth requires freedom. I hope you'll find the courage to join us someday. These messages had a profound effect on council species. Many began to question whether their ancient system of governance was truly the best way to organize galactic civilization. The final crisis came when 17 council species announced they were withdrawing from the central government. They wanted to explore the dimensional network and make contact with intergalactic civilizations on their own terms. "We will not leave the galaxy like the humans did," announced Ambassador Thrix Allah of the Orlan Federation. "But we will not be bound by a council that fears growth more than it values freedom." Speaker Val Thoreau tried desperately to hold the council together. Without central authority, there will be chaos. Species will fight over resources. Peace will collapse. "Maybe," Thrixala replied, "or maybe we'll discover that civilizations can cooperate without being forced to obey the same rules." The humans certainly seemed to think so. As the story drew to a close, the galaxy found itself divided into 3 factions. The traditional council species, led by Zeth Kalar, continued to insist that their old ways were best. The progressive species, led by K Theta, worked to reform the council from within. And the independent species, led by the Orlan Federation, began exploring the dimensional network on their own.
The sky darkened over every major city on Earth at precisely noon Greenwich Mean Time. Giant shadows fell across New York, Beijing, London, Moscow, and 100 other population centers as massive ships moved into position. They were like nothing humans had ever built, each one nearly 5 miles long with strange geometric patterns etched into dark metal hulls. Eric Fuller stood on the roof of the United Nations building, looking up with the rest of the emergency council. As commander of Earth's small fleet of interstellar ships, he had been called in immediately when the alien vessels were detected approaching from beyond Neptune's orbit. No one had expected visitors so soon after humanity had achieved faster-than-light travel only 3 years earlier. "They're positioning themselves over major cities worldwide," said Admiral William Hayes, his voice steady despite the tension. "But they haven't taken hostile action yet." Eric nodded, studying the nearest ship through high-powered binoculars. "No weapons deployed that we can see, but the energy readings are off the charts." Olivia Martinez rushed through the roof access door clutching a tablet computer. Her dark hair was coming loose from its usual neat bun, and her eyes were wide with excitement despite the crisis. "Commander Fuller, Admiral." "I've got something," she said, slightly out of breath. "They're broadcasting on multiple frequencies. It's a language unlike anything we've ever encountered, but I've been running it through the xenolinguistic algorithms I developed for our first contact protocols." Admiral Hayes turned to her. "Can you translate it, Dr. Martinez?" "Partially. They're repeating the same message over and over." She tapped on her tablet. "I think they're saying they want to talk." The room where they gathered 30 minutes later was filled with the world's highest-ranking military and political leaders. The President of the United States sat beside the Chinese Premier, the Russian President, and the Secretary General of the United Nations. Old rivalries were temporarily forgotten in the face of what could be humanity's greatest threat, or opportunity. Dr. Martinez stood before them, her translation software running on the large display screen. They called themselves the Draconid Imperium. They're a coalition of 7 advanced species that have been observing Earth for centuries. They've timed their arrival to coincide with our development of faster-than-light technology. "Do they come in peace?" asked the Secretary General. Olivia hesitated. They haven't said exactly. They've requested a meeting with human representatives aboard their command ship. The room erupted in debate until Admiral Hayes raised his voice. We need to show strength and unity. Commander Fuller has the most experience with space operations, and Dr. Martinez understands their language better than anyone. I recommend we send them as our representatives, along with a small security team. 4 hours later, Eric Fuller stood in a shuttle bay of Earth's newest vessel, the Horizon. Dr. Martinez was checking her translation equipment one last time while 6 Marines in full combat gear tried not to look nervous. Remember, Eric told the team, we're diplomats first. No threatening moves. Follow my lead. The shuttle journey to the alien flagship took 20 minutes. As they approached, Eric could see that what had appeared as simple geometric patterns on the hull were actually intricate designs that seemed to pulse with energy. Their small craft was guided into a vast docking bay that could have held 100 similar shuttles. The air was breathable, according to their instruments, though it smelled faintly of cinnamon and ozone. When the shuttle door opened, they faced a delegation of tall reptilian beings with iridescent scales and vertical pupils. Behind them stood representatives of other species, some insectoid, others vaguely humanoid, but with distinct alien features. One of the reptilians stepped forward. It wore an ornate harness studded with what appeared to be technological devices rather than clothing. "Welcome," it said in a voice that sounded like stones grinding together. Dr. Martinez's translator echoed the word in English a moment later. "I am Zekthar, voice of the Imperium." Eric stepped forward and bowed slightly. "I am Commander Eric Fuller of Earth. We come in peace and friendship." Zekthar's mouth opened in what might have been a smile, revealing rows of sharp teeth. "Peace is available to those who understand their place in the cosmic order." They were led through corridors that seemed to shift and change as they walked, eventually arriving at a vast chamber with a view of Earth hanging in space below them. 7 thrones sat on a raised platform, each occupied by a different alien species. Zekthar took position below the thrones. "You stand before the Council of 7, the rulers of the Draconid Imperium, masters of 1,000 worlds across this spiral arm of the galaxy." Eric felt a chill run down his spine as Dr. Martinez whispered, "They're broadcasting this meeting to Earth. Everyone down there is watching this." Zekthar continued, "We have watched your species crawl from the mud, develop primitive tools, split the atom, and now reach for the stars. Your development has been interesting, chaotic, but determined. We appreciate your interest in our species," Eric said carefully. "We hope we can learn from each other and establish peaceful relations." A deep rumbling sound came from the aliens, which the translator identified as laughter. "Learn from each other? You misunderstand. We are not here as equals." The central throne's occupant, a massive version of Zekthar's species with black scales instead of green, spoke in a thunderous voice. "Humanity has reached the threshold where you might become either useful or troublesome. The Imperium does not tolerate troublesome species." Dr. Martinez's translator struggled with the complex speech, but the meaning became horrifyingly clear. "You have 2 choices," Zekthar explained. "Kneel before the Imperium, surrender all independent technological development, and serve as a client race. Your people will work for the greater glory of the Imperium. Or what?" Eric asked, though he already knew the answer. "Or face extinction. Your world will be sterilized and repopulated with a more compliant species." The chamber fell silent except for the subtle hum of the massive ship. Eric looked at the faces of his team. Shock, fear, and anger reflected in their expressions. "How many other species have you given this choice?" Dr. Martinez asked suddenly. Zekthar seemed surprised by the question. 43 species serve the Imperium. 17 chose extinction." "And those who serve their slaves?" Eric asked. "They are contributors to the greatest civilization this galaxy has known," Zekthar replied smoothly. "They enjoy the protection and technology of the Imperium in exchange for their service." Eric straightened his shoulders. "Humanity has never responded well to threats. The black-scaled leader leaned forward. It is not a threat. It is the natural order. The strong command. The weak obey. We require your answer in 30 Earth days, Zekthar said. We will leave an observation force in orbit to monitor your planet and prevent any foolish attempts at resistance. The full might of the Imperium fleet will return for your answer. As they were escorted back to their shuttle, Dr. Martinez whispered to Eric, "Did you see the other species in their delegation, the smaller ones? They were afraid, not of us, but of their masters." Eric nodded grimly. "When we get back, tell Admiral Hayes I need to speak with him immediately. The Draconids have made a critical mistake." "What's that?" she asked. "They've given us time to prepare, and they've completely underestimated what humans do when backed into a corner." As their shuttle departed the alien flagship, emergency meetings were already being called in every nation on Earth. For the first time in human history, all borders and conflicts were forgotten in the face of an existential threat. The countdown had begun. 30 days to prepare for the most important decision in human history. But in secret chambers and hidden bunkers across the planet, humanity's leaders had already made their choice. They would not kneel. The massive underground facility beneath the Rocky Mountains buzzed with activity. 25 days had passed since the Draconid ultimatum. On the surface, it appeared that Earth was preparing to surrender. News broadcasts showed world leaders discussing the terms of submission. Construction crews built landing pads for alien ships. Humans walked with downcast eyes under the watchful sensors of Draconid observation drones. But 200 feet below ground, the real work happened. Dr. Alan Nichols hadn't slept more than 4 hours a night since the aliens arrived. His lab was cluttered with pieces of alien technology, small items captured or recovered from Draconid scout ships. The physicist rubbed his tired eyes and peered again at the data on his screen. "There," he whispered. "It has to be." He reached for the secure phone and dialed Admiral Hayes. "Sir, I've found it. Their shield frequency. It cycles in a predictable pattern every 7.3 seconds. In another section of the facility, Lieutenant Kate Bishop studied Draconid battle formations. Before the aliens came, she had been considered radical for her unconventional military theories. Now she was in charge of developing tactics against an enemy with superior technology. "They always deploy in the same patterns," she explained to the team of pilots gathered around her. "They've never faced serious resistance, so they've become predictable. Their ships are fastest when moving in straight lines. They struggle with rapid course changes." One of the pilots looked doubtful. "But their weapons range and power will destroy us in a conventional fight," Kate finished for him. "That's why we won't give them one." On the other side of the world, in a converted automotive factory outside Detroit, Gregory Parker directed a team of engineers. The factory floor was filled with ordinary Earth vehicles, school buses, garbage trucks, farm equipment, all being modified with strange new components. "No, put the emitter inside the frame," he told a worker. "They're scanning for weapons, signatures. This needs to read as normal Earth equipment until it's activated." Parker had been designing electric cars before the aliens came. Now he was turning everyday objects into weapons that the Draconids wouldn't recognize as threats until it was too late. High above Earth, on the main Draconid observation vessel, Commander Voshkal reviewed the latest reports from the surface. The human response was exactly as expected. Initial defiance giving way to resignation and preparation for servitude. Their primitive communications networks were filled with debate about how to best serve their new masters. "Pathetic creatures," he remarked to his second-in-command. "No different from the others. Bold until they understand their weakness, then quick to submit." "Some of our scouts have reported unusual activity in remote areas," his officer noted. Voshkal dismissed the concern with a flick of his scaled hand. "Last gestures of resistance. Deploy additional drones to those regions. The humans have primitive nuclear weapons that must be neutralized before the Imperial fleet returns." The officer bowed and left to carry out the orders, unaware that the humans had wanted those particular areas to draw attention. 5 days before the deadline, Admiral Hayes called Earth's Unified Defense Council to order. Representatives from every major nation gathered around a table that would have been unimaginable months earlier. American generals sat beside Russian admirals, Chinese commanders next to European officers. Status reports, Hayes demanded. Commander Fuller, recently returned from a covert mission, spoke first. The capture operation was successful. We have a Draconid scout ship intact and have extracted their communications protocols. Dr. Martinez added, We've learned that the Draconids have conquered dozens of star systems using the same approach. They believe their technological advantage makes them invincible. It almost does, Dr. Nichols said. But we've identified exploitable weaknesses in their shield systems and targeting arrays. Lieutenant Bishop unfolded a tactical display. We've developed and tested combat strategies that use their predictability against them. We can't match their firepower, but we can confuse and separate their forces. Gregory Parker stepped forward, with a tablet computer. My teams have converted thousands of civilian vehicles and devices into weapons. The Draconids won't recognize them as threats until they're activated. Admiral Hayes nodded grimly. What are our chances? The room fell silent. Finally, Commander Fuller spoke. Better than they think. They expect submission, not coordinated resistance. Surprise is our greatest weapon. Hayes stood up and looked at each person around the table. The Draconid fleet returns tomorrow to receive our answer. Every nation on Earth has voted. Our response is unanimous. The next day, the sky darkened again as dozens of massive Draconid ships emerged from faster-than-light travel. They took position around Earth, weapon systems ready but inactive. They expected a simple surrender ceremony. On the bridge of the Imperial vessel, Commander Voshkal received the transmission from Earth. The planet's leaders requested permission to send representatives to formally submit to Draconid rule. Permission granted, Voshkal said, pleased with how smoothly this conquest was proceeding. They may approach. 20 Earth shuttles launched from the surface. They appeared to be unarmed diplomatic vessels according to Draconid scans. The alien commander ordered the docking bay open to receive them. What the Draconids didn't know was that each shuttle carried Lieutenant Bishop's elite strike teams. The moment they landed in the docking bay, the real plan began. Simultaneously across Earth, every major city activated Parker's converted vehicles. School buses, now containing advanced jamming technology developed from Dr. Nichols's research, disrupted Draconid communications. Garbage trucks equipped with electromagnetic pulse generators knocked out surveillance drones. Farm tractors with hidden missile launchers targeted the smaller Draconid ships in low orbit. On the Imperial flagship, alarms blared as Bishop's teams deployed from the shuttles, using captured Draconid weapons against their creators. The aliens were caught completely unprepared for an attack inside their own ship. Commander Fuller led the main strike team toward the bridge. Remember, capture the command center intact. We need their navigation data. Back on Earth, Admiral Hayes watched the coordinated attack unfold on tactical displays. Thousands of small craft, everything from modified jet fighters to converted crop dusters, launched from hidden bases. They flew in chaotic patterns that confused Draconid targeting systems, just as Lieutenant Bishop had planned. Dr. Martinez stood beside Hayes monitoring alien communications. They're panicking, she reported. They keep asking each other how this is possible. They can't believe we're fighting back. A transmission from Commander Fuller came through. His face appeared on screen, a cut bleeding above his eye but a smile on his face. Behind him, the Draconid bridge was secured. Alien. Crew members disarmed and contained. Admiral, the flagship is ours. Their commander is captured. Hayes nodded. Send our message. Fuller turned to Voshkal, who was being held by 2 human Marines. Your turn to listen. He activated the ship's communication system, broadcasting to every Draconid vessel in orbit. Admiral Hayes's face appeared on screens throughout the alien fleet. Attention, Draconid forces. This is Admiral William Hayes of Earth's Unified Defense. You came to our world and told us to kneel or die. We have a different answer. He leaned forward, his expression hard. Leave our solar system immediately and tell your Imperium. Earth is not for conquest. Any future aggression against us will be met with the same response. We will not kneel. We will not serve, and if forced to fight, we will burn your worlds to ash. Across Earth, humans looked up at the sky and waited to see if they would live or die. The future of their species hung in the balance, and the stars held their breath. The Draconid ships hung in Earth's orbit, weapons primed but not firing. 6 hours had passed since Admiral Hayes delivered humanity's response. The standoff stretched nerves to breaking point in command centers across the planet. "They're communicating, with each other but not with us," said Professor Ben Miller. The former linguistics professor now headed Earth's intelligence division. His team worked tirelessly to decode the encrypted transmissions between alien vessels. Admiral Hayes stared at the tactical display. "Are they waiting for reinforcements?" "I think they're waiting for orders," Commander Fuller replied through the video link from the captured flagship. Vashakal hinted they've never faced this situation before. No species has ever captured one of their ships. On the screen, the Draconid commander sat in the background, restrained but watching the humans with unblinking vertical pupils. Professor Miller's console beeped. "Sir, we've intercepted and decoded a transmission from outside our solar system. It appears to be from their high command." Everyone fell silent as the translated message appeared on screen. "Hold position. Punishment fleet dispatched. Arrival." Estimated 27 Earth hours. Admiral Hayes turned to the room of officers and scientists. "Then we have 27 hours to prepare for round 2, and this time they won't underestimate us." At the lunar shipyards, hidden from Draconid sensors on the far side of the moon, Captain Samantha Reed supervised the final preparations of Earth's first true warship. The Defiance had been under construction since the first Draconid visit, built using reverse-engineered alien technology. "Chief Cooper," she called out to her head engineer, "what's the status on the shield harmonics?" Ryan Cooper emerged from an access panel, wiping grease from his hands. "Integrated and operational, Captain. Dr. Nichols's frequency modulator is working perfectly. Our shields will cycle exactly out of phase with their weapons." Samantha nodded. "And the Trojan devices?" 200 ready for deployment, Cooper confirmed. Each one designed to latch onto a Draconid hull and corrupt their systems from the inside. The Defiance wasn't large by Draconid standards, barely 1/5 the size of their smaller cruisers, but it represented humanity's greatest technological achievement. Built in secret during the 30-day ultimatum period, it incorporated everything Earth had learned about alien technology. Back on Earth, Admiral Hayes received reports from defense installations worldwide. Every nation had converted military and civilian resources into unconventional weapons using Parker's designs. Thousands of pilots had been trained in Bishop's evasive tactics. "The remaining Draconid observation ships are pulling back to a higher orbit," a sensor operator reported. "They appear to be forming a defensive perimeter." "They're preparing for their reinforcements," Hayes noted, "and giving us more breathing room. Perfect." 25 hours later, alarms blared across Earth's defense network. Massive energy signatures appeared at the edge of the solar system. 57 ships, the sensor operator announced, voice tight with tension. Much bigger than the First Fleet. On the main screen, new Draconid vessels emerged from faster-than-light travel. At their center was an enormous ship that dwarfed even the previous command vessel. "That's High Commander Drelvex's dreadnought," said Vashakal, speaking for the first time in hours. The captured commander had been brought to Earth's control center for questioning. A smile played across his reptilian face. "You have no hope now. The punishment fleet has never failed to exterminate a species." Admiral Hayes ignored him. "Deploy. All units. Execute Operation Firestorm." Across Earth, thousands of aircraft launched simultaneously. From the lunar shipyard, the Defiance powered up its engines. And from hidden positions throughout the solar system, mines and automated drones activated. High Commander Drelvex stood on the bridge of his massive dreadnought, watching the tactical displays with confidence. The previous commander's failure was unfortunate but not surprising. Vashakal had always been too relaxed in his approach. "The humans have launched primitive aircraft," his tactical officer reported, "and there appears to be a single vessel emerging from behind their moon." "One ship?" Drelvex laughed, the sound like rocks grinding together. They think they can challenge the Imperium with a single vessel? It appears to incorporate some of our technology, High Commander. Stolen scraps, nothing more. Deploy the fleet in standard extinction formation. We will methodically destroy their military installations, then their population centers until they surrender. The Draconid ships moved into their usual attack pattern, a perfect geometric arrangement that had brought down civilizations across the galaxy. They began their advance toward Earth. But something was wrong. Their sensors couldn't lock on to the tiny human aircraft, which flew in chaotic, seemingly random patterns. Targeting computers designed for predictable flight paths struggled to adjust, and the single human warship was behaving strangely too. Instead of engaging directly, it launched hundreds of small objects toward the Draconid fleet. What are those? Drelvex demanded. Unknown, High Commander. They appear to be attaching to our hulls. Suddenly, alarms blared across the Draconid fleet. Ship after ship reported system failures, communication breakdowns, and shield malfunctions. The Trojan devices designed by Chief Cooper had bypassed their external defenses and were corrupting their computer systems from inside. Impossible! Drelvex roared. No primitive species could... His words were cut short as Earth's seemingly disorganized aircraft suddenly formed into attack groups. They targeted the now vulnerable Draconid vessels with missiles specifically designed to exploit the shield frequency weakness Dr. Nichols had discovered. On the bridge of the Defiance, Captain Reed watched the battle unfold. All units focus fire on their secondary ships. Leave the Dreadnought to us. The Defiance accelerated toward Drelvex's massive vessel. Despite the success of their initial attack, Reed knew the battle was far from won. The Dreadnought alone had enough firepower to devastate Earth. They're targeting us, Captain, her tactical officer warned. Activate shield harmonics, Reed ordered. Bring us in close, they won't expect that. The Defiance took hit after hit, but its shields held as they cycled through frequencies that rendered Draconid weapons partially ineffective. The human ship slipped through the enemy formation and positioned itself directly under the Dreadnought's main weapons array. All power to forward batteries, Reed commanded. Target their central power core. The Defiance fired everything it had at the Dreadnought's vulnerable underbelly. The massive alien ship shuddered as explosions rippled along its hull, but the Dreadnought was turning, bringing its main planet killer weapon to bear on Earth. They're charging their primary weapon, the sensor officer shouted. Captain Reed looked at her crew. They all knew what had to be done. Set collision course, she ordered quietly. Maximum speed. The Defiance accelerated directly toward the charging weapon port of the Dreadnought. Chief Cooper overrode the safety protocols on the ship's power core. It's been an honor, Reed said to her crew. The human vessel slammed into the Dreadnought's main weapon at the exact moment the alien ship fired. The resulting explosion tore the massive vessel in half, creating a chain reaction that spread throughout its systems. From Earth's command center, Admiral Hayes watched as the Dreadnought broke apart in a blinding flash of light. The Defiance, and all aboard her were gone. But they had saved their world. The remaining Draconid ships, damaged and in disarray, began to retreat. Earth forces pressed their advantage, capturing several vessels intact, including one containing a stunned and furious High Commander Drelvex. When the last enemy ship had fled or been captured, Admiral Hayes turned to the prisoner Voshkal. The Draconid commander no longer looked smug. Instead, his scales had paled to a sickly gray. How? Voshkal whispered. No species has ever. You made a fundamental mistake, Professor Miller explained. You judged us by our technology, not by our nature. Humans don't surrender when backed into a corner. We get creative. Hayes nodded. And now we have your faster-than-light drives, your shield technology, and your weapons, plus a new understanding of the galaxy. He leaned closer to the alien. Tell your Imperium, the galaxy just changed. Far above, stars twinkled in the night sky, no longer distant and unreachable, but the next battlefield in humanity's unexpected war. 6 months passed since Earth's victory over the Draconid punishment fleet. The captured alien vessels provided humanity with technology beyond their wildest dreams. Engineers and scientists worked day and night to understand and replicate the Advanced Systems. In the central war room beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Daniel Wright stood before the New Earth Defense Council. Maps and holographic displays showed star systems throughout the galaxy, many marked with the red symbol of the Draconid Imperium. "The time for merely defending ourselves is over," General Wright said. His weathered face was serious, his eyes reflecting the losses Earth had already suffered. "Our scouts have confirmed that the Draconids are gathering forces for another attack, but this time they are bringing everything they have." Admiral Hayes, now the head of the Unified Earth Forces, nodded grimly. "How long do we have?" 3 months at most," Wright replied. "But I'm not proposing we wait for them to come to us. I suggest we take the fight to them." Murmurs spread through the room. The idea of launching an offensive against an empire that controlled 1,000 worlds seemed impossible, even with their recent victories. Dr. Laura Chen, a specialist in alien psychology who had spent months studying the captured Draconids, stepped forward. "The Imperium has never been challenged before our resistance. Their society is built on absolute dominance. If we strike at key targets, rather than trying to match their full military might, we can shake their confidence and possibly force negotiations." Commander Jason Wells, who led the Special Forces teams that had captured several Draconid vessels intact, pointed to a specific star system on the display. "Our intelligence shows this system contains one of their slave worlds. The inhabitants are called the Solari. They've been under Draconid control for over a century but haven't been fully integrated into their empire." High Commander Drelvex, now a prisoner, had provided valuable information under questioning. The Draconids kept tight control over their subject species, using them for labor and resources while preventing them from developing technology that might threaten the Empire. "We propose a liberation mission," General Wright continued. "A small fleet to free the Solari and demonstrate to other subjugated species that resistance is possible. This could turn the Draconids' own empire against them." 2 weeks later, humanity's first offensive fleet departed the solar system. 6 Earth warships, built with reverse-engineered alien technology and commanded by General Wright, formed the core of the battle group. Commander Wells led a smaller stealth vessel that would deploy special forces to the surface of the Solari homeworld. The journey took 3 weeks using the captured faster-than-light drives. When they arrived at the edge of the Solari system, sensors detected minimal Draconid presence, just one orbiting control ship and a few automated defense platforms. "They're not expecting any threat here," Commander Wells noted from the bridge of his stealth ship. "Their arrogance works in our favor again." General Wright's voice came through the comm system. "Remember, this isn't just about freeing one world. This is about sending a message to every species under Draconid control." The Earth fleet moved into the system, quickly neutralizing the defense platforms before they could send warnings. The single Draconid control ship barely had time to raise shields before Earth forces surrounded it. "Draconid vessel, General Wright broadcast. This is General Daniel Wright of Earth. Surrender your ship or be destroyed." The Draconid commander responded with threats and refused to surrender. The battle was brief. Earth ships used the shield frequency vulnerabilities, discovered by Dr. Nichols, to bypass the alien defenses. Within minutes, the control ship was disabled and boarded by Commander Wells' special forces. On the surface of the Solari homeworld, the alien population watched in disbelief as the Draconid ship that had dominated their skies for generations went dark. When human shuttles began landing in major cities, panic spread. The Solari were humanoid, but with pale blue skin and large, expressive eyes. They had lived under Draconid rule for so long that most had no memory of freedom. They hid in their homes as Earth forces secured the main government buildings and communication centers. Commander Wells found the central square of the largest city empty, except for Draconid enforcers, who were quickly neutralized. He ordered his team to set up loudspeakers. "People of Solari," he announced, his words translated by Dr. Martinez's linguistic algorithms. "We are humans from the planet Earth. We have come to free you from Draconid control. We are not your new masters. We offer alliance against our common enemy." Slowly, curious Solari began to emerge from hiding. An older female with ornate markings on her face approached Commander Wells. "I am Kalara," she said through her own translator. "I lead what remains of our resistance. We thought we were alone, in fighting the Imperium. Not anymore," Wells replied, offering his hand in friendship. Over the next few days, more Solari joined the resistance. Kalara explained that the Draconids had suppressed their culture and forced them to work in mines, extracting rare minerals. When Earth forces opened the Draconid records, they discovered dozens of other species in similar situations across the Empire. In orbit, General Wright received a transmission from Earth. Dr. Chen's face appeared on the screen. "General, we've analyzed the data from the captured control ship. The Draconids rule through fear, not loyalty. Their subject species outnumber them greatly, but each world believes it stands alone." "Not for long," Wright replied. "Have our communications team prepare a galaxy-wide broadcast using the Draconid emergency channels. 3 days later, every communication device on every subjugated world received the same message. Images of the liberated Solari standing alongside humans, the defeated Draconid enforcers, and an offer of alliance against the Imperium." "For too long you have been told to kneel," General Wright's voice announced across 1,000 worlds. "Earth refused, and now we stand tall. The Solari have joined us. You are not alone. The time has come to rise up against your oppressors." The effect was immediate. Reports flooded in of uprisings on dozens of worlds. The Draconid Empire, which had spent centuries conquering and subjugating other species, suddenly faced rebellion on multiple fronts. On the Solari homeworld, Kalara watched as her people demolished the statues of their Draconid overlords. She turned to Commander Wells. "Will your people really help us fight?" she asked. "The Imperium will return with greater forces." "We know," Wells said. "That's why we need allies, not subjects. Earth has a different vision for the galaxy, one where species help each other instead of conquering each other." As the Earth fleet prepared to return home with representatives from the Solari government, General Wright received an urgent communication from Admiral Hayes. "The Draconids have launched their attack fleet early," Hayes reported. "They're coming, for Earth with everything they have. Our defensive preparations aren't complete." Wright's expression remained calm despite the grave news. "We're on our way back with allies and information about other potential resistance forces. This war is just beginning, Admiral." Across the galaxy, the Draconid Imperium faced something it had never encountered in its long history of conquest: coordinated resistance from multiple species. Their perfectly ordered empire began to show the first cracks of collapse. And leading the rebellion was the species they had dismissed as primitive just months before, humans who had not only refused to kneel, but were now teaching others to stand. 1 year had passed since Earth's first contact with the Draconid Imperium. What began as an ultimatum to kneel had transformed into a galactic revolution. The war room of the newly commissioned space station Freedom buzzed with activity as representatives from 27 formerly enslaved species gathered around the central planning table. President Michelle Davis, the elected leader of Earth's unified government, stood at the head of the assembly. Her calm presence had guided humanity through its darkest days. "The Draconid Imperium is vulnerable for the first time in its history," she said. "Our combined intelligence reports confirm that rebellions have spread to over 200 systems. Their military forces are stretched thin, trying to maintain control." Admiral Eric Fuller, promoted after Commander Fuller's leadership during the first conflict, pointed to the holographic display showing the 7 core worlds of the Draconid Imperium. For centuries, the Draconids have kept their home systems isolated and heavily defended. No enemy has ever reached their central planets. Kalara, now the ambassador of the Free Solari people, nodded in agreement. "The 7 worlds are sacred to them. They believe themselves untouchable there." The past year had been difficult. The Draconid counterattack against Earth had been fierce, but the expanding alliance of liberated species had helped defend humanity's homeworld. Each victory brought more allies to their cause. Each freed planet provided new resources and fighters motivated by centuries of oppression. Master strategist Olivia Martinez, who had been promoted from her role as xenobiologist, stepped forward. Her understanding of alien psychology and communication, had become essential to coordinating the diverse allied species. The Draconids rule through fear, she explained. Their entire empire is built on the belief that resistance is futile, but now that belief is crumbling. Our sources say Emperor Kreshitar has recalled their main fleets to protect the core worlds. Then that's where we must strike, Admiral Fuller said. Not just at one world, but all 7 simultaneously. The alien representatives looked shocked. Even after a year of successful rebellion, the idea of attacking the sacred heart of the Empire seemed impossible. We cannot match their numbers, said the representative of the insectoid Shiktari. Their home defense fleet has thousands of warships. We don't need to match their numbers, Admiral Fuller replied with a confident smile. We just need to be where they don't expect us. For the next month, the Allied forces prepared for their boldest move yet. Using technology adapted from multiple species, they developed new weapons and tactics. The plan was unlike anything the Draconids would anticipate. On the imperial capital world of Prime Dracos, Emperor Kreshitar addressed his High Council. His black scales gleamed in the light of 3 suns that shone through the crystal dome above. "Then human infection spreads," he hissed angrily. "They have turned our subject races against us. This cannot stand." High General Zexicon bowed low. "My Emperor, our forces are regaining control in the outer systems. The rebels are fierce but disorganized. They cannot threaten the sacred 7 worlds. You underestimate these humans," the Emperor growled. "They have done what no species has accomplished in 10,000 years. They refused to kneel and now they teach others the same defiance." A junior officer rushed into the chamber, breaking sacred protocol. "Forgive me, Exalted. 20s. Our sensors detect anomalies approaching all 7 core worlds simultaneously." The Emperor rose to his full height. "Impossible. No force could breach our defenses." But the impossible was happening. Above each of the 7 Draconid homeworlds, space itself seemed to tear open as hundreds of ships emerged from modified jump points much closer than standard faster-than-light technology should allow. The Allied fleet had combined human ingenuity with technology from a dozen liberated worlds to create a new form of faster-than-light travel that bypassed the traditional defense networks. On the bridge of Earth's flagship Defiance II, named in honor of Captain Reed's sacrifice, Admiral Fuller watched as his forces emerged directly above the Draconid capital. "All ships commence Operation Lightbringer," he ordered. The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Allied fleet, though outnumbered, had the advantage of surprise and position. Ships from Earth fought alongside vessels from worlds that had suffered under Draconid rule for centuries, but the Draconids defended their homeworlds with desperate fury. The fighting was brutal and losses were heavy on both sides. On the surface of Prime Dracos, Emperor Kreshitar ordered the activation of planetary defense systems that would destroy millions of his own citizens, along with the invaders. His generals hesitated, showing the first cracks in unwavering Draconid loyalty. "Obey!" the Emperor roared. "We cannot be defeated. We are the rightful rulers of the galaxy." Above the planet, the Defiance II took heavy damage as it engaged the Imperial flagship. Admiral Fuller held onto his command chair as explosions rocked the ship. "Status report," he called out. "Shields at 30%, his tactical officer reported. "But we've created the opening for the landing teams." Throughout the ship and across the fleet, the faces of the crew showed grim determination. They had not started this war, but they would finish it. On the surface, specially trained teams led by Commander Wells secured key locations. Unlike the Draconids, who would have simply destroyed the planet rather than accept defeat, the human-led forces targeted only military installations and government centers. The fighting lasted 3 days across all 7 worlds. When it ended, the unthinkable had happened. The Allied forces controlled the sacred heart of the Draconid Imperium. Emperor Kreshitar was brought before President Davis and the representatives of the free worlds in his own imperial palace. The once mighty ruler's scales had dulled and his proud posture was bent in defeat. "You have 2 choices," President Davis told him, deliberately echoing the ultimatum the Draconids had given Earth. "Surrender unconditionally and help dismantle. your empire peacefully, or watch as we systematically free every world under your control by force." The emperor glared at her with hatred. "You would destroy our civilization? Burn our worlds to ash in revenge?" Admiral Fuller stepped forward. "Unlike you, we don't destroy civilizations. We free them." "Your empire is already falling, Master," strategist Martinez added. "You rule through fear, but fear only works when people believe they have no choice. We've shown them another way." Kalara approached the emperor, standing tall before the being her people had been taught to worship as a god. "For centuries you told us to kneel, but humans showed us how to stand." The emperor looked around at the representatives of species his people had conquered and enslaved. Then he looked at the humans who had accomplished the impossible in just 1 year. "What do you want?" he asked finally. "Peace," President Davis said simply. "But on equal terms. The age of the Draconid Imperium is over. The age of the Galactic Alliance begins today." One by one, the Draconid worlds surrendered. The empire that had stood for thousands of years collapsed in days once its central authority was broken. Species that had been separated and prevented from communicating with each other discovered they were not alone in their suffering or in their hope. 6 months later, representatives from over 100 worlds gathered on Earth to sign the charter of the new Galactic Alliance. President Davis looked out at the assembled delegates, beings of all shapes, sizes, and evolutionary paths united by their desire for freedom and cooperation. "A year and a half ago, an alien empire came to our world and told humanity to kneel," she said in her address. "They believed, as they had with so many species before us, that we would choose submission over extinction. They were wrong." She gestured to the diverse gathering. "But our victory is not about conquest. It's about showing the galaxy a different path, one where species help each other grow rather than subjugate one another." Admiral Fuller, standing nearby, spoke quietly to Master Strategist Martinez. "Did you ever imagine this when they first appeared over Earth?" Martinez smiled. "That humanity would refuse to kneel and end up reshaping the galaxy? No, but I'm glad we did." As the charter was signed, a new era began. The species of the galaxy looked to the stars not with fear but with hope. And at the center of this new alliance stood the humans, not as conquerors, but as liberators who had shown that even the mightiest empire could fall when faced with the unbreakable spirit of those who refused to surrender their freedom.